It's a silent threat lurking where you'd least expect it, in our drinking water. We assume, of course, it's safe, but scientists are warning about a common and potentially dangerous chemical that can survive in the ground and in our water forever. PFAS is an acronym for a family of man-made compounds called per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. The CDC has listed a host of health effects believed to be associated with exposure to those chemicals, including cancer, liver damage, increased cholesterol, and a lot more. The chemicals are so highly mobile, they're not only being found in soil and groundwater, but in the atmosphere too. In fact, they've even been detected in raindrops falling in some of the most remote areas of the world.
No.
Kathy and Bruce Harrington, who live next to a farm, were notified by Maine's Department of Environmental Protection that their drinking water was tainted with PFAS. The likely source was 2 industrial plants not far away.
Your well is right there.
Yep, well is right there. They come and tested our water, and they said, we'll send you a report in a couple of weeks or whatever. And they called us in a few days, and they said, do not drink your water, don't use it for cooking, nothing.
All for what? Asks Bruce.
Bottom line is we don't need freaking eggs to slide out of pans versus people dying.
PFAS contamination is really a national crisis, and the real scale of contamination is staggering. The more we test, the more we find it.
Melanie Benish, legislative attorney at the Environmental Working Group in Washington, says thousands of sites nationwide are polluted with PFAS, and she lays the blame for that growing crisis squarely at the feet of the companies who invented the chemicals in the first place.
It is the manufacturers like DuPont and 3M who have gotten us here today. So they've known for 70 years that they were poisoning the water, and they didn't tell the EPA, they didn't tell their neighbors, they didn't tell their workers, they didn't tell anyone because they were making too much money.
In the last 2 decades, thousands of lawsuits have been brought against the manufacturers for allegedly knowing PFAS chemicals were dangerous. While most deny they did anything wrong, settlement offers have been pouring in to the tune of billions of dollars. But Benish says the manufacturers aren't the only ones to blame.
There has also been regulatory failure. The FDA knew in the 1960s, the Department of Defense knew in the 1970s, the EPA has known since at least the 90s, and they didn't treat the issue with the amount of urgency that it needed.
Regulating PFAS is like playing a game of whack-a-mole. DuPont and 3M phased out 2 of the PFAS suspected of being the most harmful, but they still manufacture others. In fact, there are thousands of variants.
Many of them have real similarities that make it very likely that one is just as toxic as the other.
Based on what it called new evidence, this past June, the EPA did update its drinking water advisories about PFAS, warning that even the tiniest amounts over a lifetime may be enough to cause negative health effects in humans. But it stopped short of creating a new federal drinking water standard.
There has been no new drinking water standard in the United States since the 1990s. 30 years.
Do a post with some of that. And
so,
tell us which station.
Emily co-founded Clean Cape Fear. It's a community action group that, among other things, has been fighting for both federal and state agencies to crack down harder on all of the PFAS pollutants.
You have 2 choices. You can have a breakdown about it, or you can channel that energy and that heartbreak into something productive and create a positive.
Chemours was forced by state environmental regulators to install a host of anti-pollution technologies. It's cost them millions. In a statement to CBS News, the company says it's destroying over 99.99% of PFAS in the air, and it's reduced PFAS compounds reaching the Cape Fear River by 97%. As for PFAS that have built up in the ground over the years, Chemours says it will build a barrier wall that will capture and treat the groundwater, a process it says will remove nearly all of them.
The exposure has dropped dramatically for people who live downstream. It's much tougher for the people who live immediately around the plant whose wells are contaminated.
This is 2-week-old
2 weeks old.
seedling.
Okay.
What Professor Canepe is now interested in investigating is to see just how much of any PFAS is present in the food grown nearby.
We have analyzed some of the produce from backyard gardens in that area that suggests the levels can be quite high.
I'm scared that it's too late. I'm scared that we're going to die because of what we've ingested.
Residents like Jane Jacobs, a member of the native Tuscarora Nation, have always seen the land as sacred. But she fears the blight on her tribe's land might just end a way of life.
My people have always hunted in these swamps, but they're fed by the rivers. So now the animals are polluted the same way the water's polluted because they drink out of the rivers and out of the swamps.